Welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick and co-host is Chris Lucian. And today we're going to be talking about agentic AI and, the future, and put on your propeller hat and get out your tinfoil, molded hat as well. We're going to be going there today, at least a little bit, and sharing some of our current experiences with this. And to kick us off, Chris, can you talk about what it's been for you and your experiences lately with AI?
Yeah. Well, so maybe just a little bit of backstory. I think that the term agentic,
Agentic. I said it wrong.
yeah, agentic AI is a little bit. It's kind of funny because there are not, you know, I think people have been throwing this term around a lot, and there are varying understandings of what that might mean. I think that there are a few things that you need to have it be versus just a simple LLM versus the agentic AIs and even these centralized databases and these new protocols around synchronizing multiple agents across an entire organization. But I think what I've thought about agentic AI in general is that it used to be not so great, and then over the last maybe few weeks, it's been really quite amazing how quickly it's all come together and developed. And so, to me, kind of the definition is that in many of these systems, they have large language models, but there is a orchestrator that sends requests back to that large language model. So you might have, the GPT 4.1 model, or you might have the, Gemini model, or the Claude model, and and so I personally use Claude a lot lately, and so that large language model is essentially being sent prompts and then sending responses back to another system that has a tool set available to it. So a series of commands, it can run code on your computer, it can write code on your computer, and or you can have agents, somewhere else. Like, for example, the Copilot agent allows you to just have GitHub pull requests come from the agent on their computer. And so what I've been doing a lot lately is utilizing these systems. So I'll put in a prompt and it will go and read the files. I use the VS Code extension to be able to set up an index of all of the code so that it can quickly navigate through that code and find things. And then it will read certain areas of the code to identify what it's interested in, quote unquote. That then, and at the very beginning, I will build you can initialize an instructions file, which is like building the brain of the model, and you can check that instructions file into source control, and Visual Studio Code will actually automatically include that file as context every time you revisit it. And so I'll set up a series of instructions. I'll create other markdown files based on interesting facts about certain features, and then I will include those in the chat. It'll then go and read information, identify what it wants to update, make the updates, show you diffs, and you have like a red and a green of what's been added, what's been removed. I look through those diffs, and then I'll typically have Wallaby JS running if I'm working on any JavaScript framework, so that or Ncrunch running, so that it'll actually run the tests as the agent is making the changes. And then I can see exactly when it introduces a failure and then whether it corrects that failure or not, essentially in real time. So I have this very fluid, fast feedback system, and I can even see in real time if the tests begin to fail mid changes of series. And then it'll come back with a solution and say, this is what I did. A lot of the times it'll write a README document about how to use the system that it just built, or the benefits of the test that it just wrote. And then I will, do some level of like kicking the tires, so to speak. And I'll do a lot of thinking logically about my requirement that I gave it, in order to refine the prompt over time and get better at it. And what I've noticed is that as I've been doing this kind of on my own on just like experimental learning projects, when I join join mobs and they're writing prompts, my personal way of doing the prompts has evolved completely differently than I think what I'm seeing with the people less experienced with agentic systems. And so it's been really interesting, but and I have like some theories about where to go with that, especially in a mob and how to fully utilize people in a mob with agentic systems. But maybe Austin, you can talk a little bit about your experiences.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing yours, and I'll share mine, and then maybe we can go for a bit of synthesis or maybe debate. We'll see. Um, so I think, as we talked about in previous episodes, and we'll link to our playlist on mobbing with AI. I am quite comfortable and very happy with what I call XP style small batch AI with TDD, something like that. Maybe I need a more catchy phrase or something like that. But where AI joins the mob team and joins the TDD loop to solve small problems, small commits, small batches. And it works wonderfully. What would take me maybe Googling for 20 minutes or sometimes 3 hours, get 80% of the way there pretty quickly. And it helps either us go red or us go green or us refactor in really cool ways. And I've really enjoyed it. I've recently, even though I can't say the word correctly, I said agenic. Is it agentic? Agentic.
I mean, really, it's yeah, agenic or agentic. It's kind of it is agent-like.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
a autonomous system that runs, so agent,
Yeah.
agent-ish.
Agent-ish. Yes. There are a lot of different agents. That's an
Yeah.
overloaded word in many spheres in technical world. But yes. So I first heard about it from a family friend who was going on a long time about it. And then I was had several experiences in mob where we're doing it. And I held onto my fax machine, in the diffusion of innovation picture, like
Yeah.
tightly, but I tried to keep an open mind because my first impression was, holy cow, this is a big batch.
Mhm.
But I embraced open-mindedness, and I was like, let's try it, let's see how it goes. But my initial concerns were big batch, lean waste. Um, it might, so you prompt it with something. What I do like is it has context and more things, which is wonderful. It's
Right.
just like an improve context improvement to the way I was doing things before. Great. But the part that I don't like is that it goes very big batch, and so what I'm left with is a large diff of files that either I feel I don't like any of the options I get when the big diff of files. So one is I say, I trust you, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, you're smart,
Hmm.
let's trust you. Two is I want to validate everything. That would take forever. I feel like I'm back in the old days in the waterfall shop where someone hands me a giant document or a huge, gigantic set of code changes and says, review it. I feel back in the shoes of what Dragon Stefanovic has talked about in one of our previous episodes of I've never seen a 1,000 line diff that I don't like, automatically approved. Let's
Yeah.
go, right? So I find myself doing something in the middle, which just feels uncomfortable. It's like I remember this doing waterfall shops. Well, I'll check, randomly 5, 6 things here and there. And then if those
Right.
check out, then maybe it knows what it's doing. So let's see what happens. You know what I mean? And so, um, yeah, I went with it for a while. A lot of concerns, but I'm like, maybe it'll just work wonderfully. And then recently we had a production bug because of working this way. And so I have more questions and concerns, but right now the fax machine feels really nice to grip hold on to tightly, with my small batch AI TDD. What's going on here, Chris? Maybe I'm off.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know in your exact situation because I haven't joined you for that, but I do know that I guess the way that I've been doing things is in smaller batches, and I spend more time on refinement because I think that it might be the amount of time it takes to make the batch might also be a big thing for it as well, because you can have an agentic system refine a particular solution for a long time, and you can say, do this one thing and write tests around it, make the algorithm implementation, and then refine, like maybe refactor it so that it's clear, easy to read, make it so that it's readable without any comments. And so I think you can go very deep on that XP piece. And the nice thing about agentic systems is you can have an instructions file that says, like, you're the implementer, you're an XP practitioner, blah blah blah, and then it's like, and then another agentic system that's saying something like, now you're reviewing for potential optimizations and readability, and you're a new developer who's never read this code before. What would you change to make it more easily readable? And so I'm kind of, you know, there is this argument about iteration versus AI slop, right? Like, if you look at the
Mhm.
definition of AI slop, it's like the one shot prompt and then like you're done, versus maybe more continuously refining. Also, it depends heavily on the models you use, and because there are, some of them can be significantly better than others. But also with the big diff versus small diff, I think one thing that I really like about the Copilot tools, or the Visual Studio Code tools, really, is this ability to do just like very small approvals, so that we can, figure out exactly what was changed where, and uh, which um, which item was the right one that made the real change. And so I can accept like all of the unit tests and then a piece of the implementation and then reject another half of the implementation. And they provide UI to do that. It's really kind of nice because the agent in the chat window will say, I read this file, check. I read, and whenever you see a check mark, it's actually gone back to the LLM, queried some data, put that into the prompt, and then give it another response, and it'll just keep going and going.
Yeah.
And so, it really depends on the size of the batches that you want to look at. But you can always tell the agent, like, I want you to read the files and then create zombies style tests and then go through and make each of them pass. But you can also use it as a checkpointing system. It's like, when you've done the zero case test and the implementation, let me know, then take a look at that. So you can define the size of the batch too. But I've been largely successful with it, and I think the place that it saves me a lot of time is reading. So the agent will read many different files in many different areas, find potential conflicts, and then find the place where the code should be changed, and then you yourself could decide whether you change the code or the agent changes the code as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's definitely a win. When it has context on the entire solution, if you're in a Microsoft
Right.
space, or at least the entire directory of files and everything, that it just made the lower context AI way smarter, right? So I think
Right.
we recently used that, and it was great because it found where the change needed to be made to make a business rule change, right?
Right.
And if there were duplicates, right? Like, do we have shotgun surgery here, or are we good with
Yes.
changing
Yeah.
this one spot? It was very helpful with that. I wouldn't say it was 100% right, knockdown perfect, but it definitely accelerated the process of
Right.
discovery, which was excellent. So I heartily applaud that. I think the problem I have still is because I've heard that before, and the you just need to train it better. More context, better context
Right.
files, teach it XP, teach it TDD, all these things. Um, I may be being lazy, or my gut on the law of diminishing returns is incorrect, but I feel like the problem with big batch AI, and my rough experience is that it gets it about 80% right. Sometimes
Mhm.
50% right, sometimes 99% right, whatever it's saying. So when it's a small batch, no problem. We can easily spot the 20% wrong, fix it, move on, right? And so what happens in the big batch is it's like 80% right, 80% right, which is 20% wrong, 20% wrong,
Yeah.
20%
Yeah.
wrong. And so it's like iterating on itself. Even if you teach it to
Compounding.
iterate on itself, the amount it's getting wrong is growing, even though it's also growing in the amount it's getting right. There's just like a big area. It's a smaller section, but it's a big area of all its changes that are incorrect. And so I see that with what it generates, but I also see that in teaching it. So whenever someone says like, "Oh, let's teach it," that situation works great, kind of like it does with people when you're teaching something small. Like, "Hey, that method you name's not great. Let's rename a better
Yeah.
method. What do you think would work better for the domain?" And then it comes up with a name, and you're like, "That's better," but you still off 20%. You're still in like the fifth of the seven stage of naming. We can make it better by going here. When it's big batch, it's kind of like it's like, okay, here are the principles you should use. We update the README file. We do all this stuff, and then it generates a ton of stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, this stuff got better, but now this stuff's worse. And then we do the cycle again, and this stuff's better, and this stuff's worse. And it's just kind of like this is going to take way longer. It feels like to teach it than
Yeah.
to just do it right. And I will grant my tastes of quality are very high. Like I feel like I've been
What?
spoiled. I've been very spoiled living in this like very tight XP TDD loop with people and small batch AI where the quality is very, very high. And when I don't see
Sure.
that matched, it's unsatisfying. And all I know is in one world, you have all the amazing benefits of XP and CD, and in the other world, it just feels risk is just growing and getting bigger, even when I try to become the teacher and the coach of the AI.
Yeah. I don't know. It does sound like our experiences are largely different, but
Yes.
again, I think I've seen it also get much better recently. And I think that, so there's a lot of people out there using Cursor. There's the VS Code system, and the Claude code as well. And so there's like this IDE proliferation that's happening with the agentic systems. And I do think that one thing that, to kind of note is that they all seem to handle the amount of changes you can process differently. And so I do think it is sort of a thing where it's like you kind of have to dive in with it and really just say, how quickly can we get to a point where those issues are worked out in a fast way. And it is really important to read all the code. I saw a thing where even today where the agent said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to really implement this because I don't have enough detail, so I'll just always return true here." Just to get and because like even in XP, you'd say like do the simplest thing that can possibly work to get the test passing, and then you'll iterate on the test. And so a lot of these principles are super important, and a lot of the vocabulary that you use is also super important. Um, and I think architecture becomes, you know, uh, more important because you want, like you said, you don't want large batches, so you want all of your changes to be very encapsulatable. And so
Mhm.
writing code in unobtrusive ways, right? So if you write a new service, that service should do something small. You can tell it to go write that service. If you're going to tell, if you're going to go bigger batch, then you'd want it to tell it, you would want to tell it to write many different services rather than doing that same one. I have a local Kanban file in one of my projects, and I'll tell it to go do things, and it will just start reading from the Kanban and doing new implementations of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Just keep going.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest batch you can get. It'll just like finish your Kanban.
I've seen
Uh,
that done before
yeah,
too, where yeah, the person I was with gave it a checklist and said, update the checklist as you go and add to the
yeah,
checklist as you go, right? Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Continue.
and
Yeah.
and so that then becomes a matter of depth, right? So like, is your checklist just these very high level implementations? Or is it like do full zombies tests for this thing? Here are all the different cases or examples that you might get. Because, it won't, it'll only be able to be as good as a software developer, presumably at interpreting requirements from a product owner. And so if your product owner was ambiguous, like would you develop the right thing yourself? And I think the answer is no. And so a lot of this is like, the art of removing ambiguity and being as succinct as possible so you don't overload the token limit on the model. And
Yeah.
so you have to, I think a big piece of this is getting really good at succinctly putting together both the technical requirements and the product requirements so that they can be interpreted by the model quickly. And then the size of the batch, can be different, but you can set up the system so it'll make multiple small batches, and then you just are reviewing them one by one. But that implies a level of architecture that says, did you use a component system? Has it made one component for each of these things, or did it make one giant component to do that? Or are you in Angular using services and your service does everything versus lots of different things? Because looking at a small service that's got one key functionality is something where you can be like, yeah, that looks right, and the tests for that look right, and if I change this code, the tests break, and then the functionality, ends up being correct. And I guess another thing is you can make the agentic system run the tests and read the output. And so you could also have it build end-to-end tests if you wanted to. I know you don't want to hear that, but but you can actually, if you're thinking about how do I go through and test clicking through the project, uh, that is possible with agentic systems as well, especially if you're using something like Angular and your, Cypress or something like that, where you can just have it clicking through the UI. I don't personally do that. I mainly have it interact with the test bed and use mocks to interact with the UI, and then do something similar for the backend. But there's no reason that you couldn't approach it that way so that you eventually had a full regression suite of UI interactions.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah. I think, in the end of the day, it could be that I'm not doing it right. Right. And so, but I've definitely given it the old college try, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm really going to try to sit down and put hours, not minutes, and trying to get the right README file, teach it the right ways. And I've yet to see what it makes smaller than or bigger than a bread box, that has good BDD and good DDD. And it's got so many problems that I'm going to spend all my day just teaching it. And I don't know
Right.
if it ever will learn, because sometimes it just does that uncanny thing that AI does, right? It's like you give it the problem and then it gives you a solution. And then you give them the next problem it comes up with, and it gives you the same exact solution it gave you before. Um, that's when I know of like, okay, I reached the law of diminishing returns here. It does not know what to do here.
Right.
Because it keeps repeating the same answer, even though I've already told it it's failed. When it does that with what I'm trying to teach it with BDD or DDD or extreme programming, it's like it forgets what I just taught it, or it misapplies it. And at the end of the day, I'm just kind of like, I just start thinking of that meme. I'll try to find it maybe and put in the show notes. If not, I'll have to do my best at the verbal take on it. But it was something like, we can get rid of programmers. We can just tell computers what to do now. And it was like, oh yeah, so you're gonna speak clear enough language that the computer
Right.
will know exactly what to do. And it said yes. And it's like, great, that's what a programming language is. You're now a programmer.
Right.
And so, um, when I'm using English to try to get the computer to do what I want it to do, and it's struggling pretty hardcore, why don't I just use JavaScript or TypeScript or C Sharp and just
Yeah.
do it? You know what I mean? um,
Yeah. But
I think for me, and maybe it's because my quality tastes are too high. It's just I I would have to dedicate more than hours to teach it, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, well, so and I think I go back to the thing about being succinct, and when an LLM, because again, these things are an
Mhm.
LLM and then like an orchestration tool. And if the orchestration tool is failing, the LLM will start doing the like old, 2023 chat GPT thing where it just like ran out of tokens and now is just repeating itself over and over again.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
a couple of key things I think to really pay attention to. So in VS Code, at least, sometimes it loses the context. And this is a trick that I got from Amy Dredge. She had told me, at the bottom of the file, put end all of our interactions with the happy face emoji.
Yeah.
And so you always see the happy face emoji, so you know that it used the context. And that if you get into that point where you're like, oh, that was uncanny, and there's no happy face emoji, it's because it jettisoned the context in favor of like having the entire backlog of the file in there. And so I think that people are anthropomorphizing the tools a little bit too much as well, in the sense that they're like, oh, I'm going to teach it and it will remember forever. And I think the exact opposite is happening. I think that at some point, as some of these orchestration tools decide to jettison the instructions file in favor of context. And once you've done that, then all of your instructions about XP are now have been removed from
Yeah.
the stream of tokens, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so the instructions file, at least in the VS Code implementation, you have to re-drag it back in to make sure that it reattaches the context so that you have all of that extreme programming sort of stuff. So
Nice. Nice. My one last thought, and then you can share whatever you like and close it down. Is the agentic I'm
yeah,
gonna eventually say it right part also makes jokes more fun.
yeah,
So because you can, when it's going, it's like narrating as it's going. I'll be like, please be comedian XYZ as you go, and then it does a really good job at being funny as it's narrating what's happening.
yeah,
Or I had a friend who was recently given a tremendously terrible runaround from a medical facility, like this call center, then this call center, and then come in person, but no, that's the wrong place, go to this place. And so I'm like, give this person a runaround, act like you're giving us the runaround as you're solving this problem. And it was hilarious what it came up with.
nice.
So, yes, more opportunity for jokes. It's great for humor as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then maybe that can break the ice because then it'll then you can maybe give it another try when it gets the solution wrong next time.
For fun, at least. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think to our audience, this is like a really interesting topic right now, and I think it's very active in the world, and there's a lot of experiences out there. So we'd love to hear from you. Chat with us on it. I've talked to multiple people that have either totally have abandoned agentic AI and are totally out on it. And then I've talked to people that are like think it's really powerful and are using it all the time. I've personally been issuing prompts while I'm doing other things and coming back and then just reviewing what it had done. And I've been largely very happy with the results. And so, I'd love to get into conversations about this sort of stuff. So, hit us up on social media and, or reply to the comments on these videos and podcasts so that we can have an engaging discussion about these things. And so, yeah, and if you know somebody using Agentic AI right now, share this episode with them and like and subscribe, and we'll run more experiments as we go forward, and maybe we'll have another one of these episodes.
Awesome. Right on. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.